One of my favorite flies, it's a dry fly, is an ant. It's a terrestrial. Terrestrials are basically land-living insects. They're targets of opportunity. They're oftentimes looked at like a food source by trout either before or after the main part of the season. Early in the spring when you got a lot of runoff, there's ants washing in. Toward the end of the summer, you still got ants active, blowing out of the trees and grass. You've got grasshoppers. This little ant pattern is a neat little ant pattern. It's got a good silhouette. And one of the lessons that we really wanted to cover on this tape is paying attention to silhouette. There's probably three major elements that are important to a trout regarding a fly. The first is size. You really need to get the size approximate to what they'll believe is a good food source or similar to what they're eating. The second is silhouette. And ants have a real good silhouette. They look like a little barbell with some legs on them. It's a real recognizable silhouette, so we really want to capture that essence. And color is somewhere down there about third. Because they're looking up at a dry fly, it's mostly a silhouette. So we're really going to work on getting you to pay close attention to silhouette on this fly. And this is a very simple fly. All we're going to use is some brown hackle and some black dubbing. It could be rabbit dubbing, it could be any type of dubbing that you like, super fine, some type of synthetic. And this is a winged ant. It's going to be a black ant. You can tie ants in different colors. This is pre-blended dubbing as opposed to what we're using off of the hare's mask. This I believe is super fine. It's a synthetic, has real good flotation qualities. We're going to dub the abdomen or the rear little ball, rear end, butt part of the ant, the little silhouette. And I'm going to start with a real, they call this super fine dubbing because you can get down to a real thin weenie, really controlled, tight little weenie of this stuff. See how thin that is? Well, the abdomen on an ant is tapered. It's kind of pointed like a reverse teardrop. It's real skinny at the back and then it kind of gets fatter at the front. And I just think they're so cute when you tie them that way. Get that little teardrop effect going on the back of the fly. It just looks neater than heck. I think the fish like it too. Okay, I'm going to actually, on this particular dry fly, my first couple wraps are going to be just around the bend of the hook a little bit, and it'll look like that little rear end of that ant. Looks like a little wasp stinger. But you just do that with just maybe a couple wraps, and then you get up on top of the flat part of the shank. There's my first wrap. I'm coming up onto the shank. Now I'm on the shank, and I really want to keep the abdomen, this whole ball of fur, to the rear of the hook point. Just keep wrapping it tightly in the same place back here, and don't proceed forward. We really want to accentuate the roundness of that abdomen. See that? That's what I like to do on my ants. I like to go ahead and tie the abdomen, proceed forward a little ways, leave a little gap on the shank here, and because this part of the shank is exposed, it's just overwrapped with black thread, I like to put just a little bit of cement on there. And that's kind of the waist of the ant right there. I'm going to take a couple little brown hackle tips from up in here, and I'm going to tie those on. Those are going to be the little wings, and I'm going to just tie them out in a little delta fashion. I'm going to tie them on one at a time. This one I'm going to put, this is going to be the left wing. It's going to go off in that direction. I'm going to capture it real lightly with a wrap and then firm down, and then come forward on the stem a little bit to get it on there good. Then go back to the tying point. Now that wing's just a little bit long. I don't like it. Nothing says I can't go ahead and just shorten it up a little bit. That wing can come back just a little bit beyond the abdomen or the rear of the fly. I'm going to tie this wing in just on the opposite side. I'm just going to put it across there. I'm going to capture that with a real loose wrap. Pull that hackle up on top. I'm going to catch it with a real loose wrap, and then I'm going to catch it with a couple firmer wraps. And I'm going to look at it. Both of them look pretty even. Not doing all kinds of pressure and pulling on here. I'm just going to reach in here gently and cut these butts out so they're not in my way. Here again, anything that looks like it's going to project forward and get around the eye, just get it out of there right now and it won't ever bother you again. Okay, we're at about the midpoint of the shank of the hook. I'm going to go ahead and tie the hackle in. It's just going to be a standard radial dry fly hackle. So I'm going to go up in here on the neck until I get a small enough feather that'll do that thing for me. And I'm going to pluck it out. You can use one hackle, you can use two, that's up to you. Fairly flat water, you can get away with one hackle. You might have to put fly floating on it about every other fish or every few drifts. But a little sparse profile doesn't hurt if you can get away with it, if the water's not too boisterous. Now I'm going to go ahead and tie that hackle in. Not exactly wrapping it over itself, but I'm going to start back and I'm going to wrap the first wrap. The next wrap just butts right in front of it, and so on. Next wrap right in front of this. If you could get in there and look at the shaft of the feather, it's just wrapped right next to each other, just butting up like a coil of wire. And I just pretty much want to keep that whole hackle confined to that one little area right there. Starting to look like a traditional dry fly. And final element in getting that neat little ant silhouette is doing that front portion, the head. Now they have a thorax, but I try not to pay too much attention to the thorax because where that's all hackled in there and where the legs are simulated, the thorax is in there, and that really does, the hackle itself does a good job of bulking up that particular part of the fly. If I went and tried to dub it in there, it would not have a well-defined silhouette, which is what we really want to get out of this fly. So here again, we've got our abdomen dub back here, ball of dubbing. We've got a big bare space on the shank that just has thread wrapped over it. We've got our wings, we've got our hackle, and just at the very front of the fly, we're going to tie another ball of dubbing in here. And it's separated far enough from the rear that this little sucker is going to have a nice little ant silhouette when we get done. Go ahead and cover up to the front. Whip finish. That's a killer fly, and you can, I mean, it's just a couple materials, real simple to tie. Once you if you're going to tie, sit down and tie about half a dozen, you'll start getting where you can crank them out much faster. But gosh, this is a great fly. I really tried to talk my friend Aaron out of insisting that it was included on the tape. It's like a secret weapon. But it's cool. You really need to know how to tie an ant properly and get a good silhouette.